Today's headline is Dazed on the Desert. The subheadline says, a man dies of thirst within 150 yards of a lake of fresh water. This article originally came from the San Francisco Examiner. It was originally reported in San Diego on October 3rd. It says, on the burning sands of Cocopah Desert, besides a lake that appears to be the coolest and the purest of fresh water, lie the bones of an American who died of thirst, and around him are 5 or 6 holes of 2 or 3 feet in depth, which he dug with his fingernails in a frenzy of thirst. His fingers are worn off at the ends, and only his whitening bones are left to bear witness to the tragedy. Jose Garcia, who makes a living by pedaling from one little camp to another on the desert, has returned from a trip which began on August 20th. He left here at that time and engaged a guide at the new placer camp at Los Picachos, below the boundary line, to take him to a mining camp at the Cocopah Mountains in the heart of the desert. The guide was named Quirino Cecil, a half-breed, and with them went also Frank Cota, a Mexican. They left Los Picachos in the afternoon, traveled all night, and by the next morning were far out on the desert. By some miscalculation, they were without water, and though not lost, they were bewildered as to the nearest way to a well, and spent the next 2 days in traveling without water, becoming almost insane from thirst. On the evening of the 3rd day, they found water. They were then on the northeast side of Great Salt Lake, or Laguna Salada, that lies between the Cocopah Mountains on the east and the Painted Mountains on the west. The lake is about 6 miles wide and 20 or 30 in length, varying in size according to the season, indicating that it is fed by the Gulf of California. It is very shallow and saltier than the waters of the ocean. The 3 men proceeded southward between the lake and Cocopahs for a distance of 10 miles or so, and there encountered 2 Mexicans and a white man. The 2 former were named Margarito Angulo and Felipe Marino, and the American's name was not learned, but from the description he is thought to be Fred Wassam, who left the city for the Cocopah Placers some weeks ago. Garcia continues the story as follows. The men came from Los Picachos by way of Niji and had been without water for several days, and one of them, Margarito Angulo, was already crazy. He was as deaf as a post and wandered around like a drunken man. He paid no attention to my guide, and we had to lay hold of him to make him drink. In a few hours he was all right. The others were in their right minds, but in a terrible condition, and as I saw their swollen tongues, my own began to swell, for I had passed through the same torture only 2 days before, and even now my tongue swells while I think of it. We gave them water, and they soon revived and continued on their way. They were burdened with a dry washer and many tools and moved slowly, so we left them, my guide giving them directions where to find the next water. A few miles further, we came upon the bones of a man lying stark on the sand, about 25 yards from the lake. There was no flesh left. The coyotes had found the body. One leg was gone, but the rest of the remains were there. The head lay toward the north, face upward. The whiskers were dark and turning gray, and the hair was the same. The man had worn a blue jumper, a red woolen undershirt, 1 boot, and a brown slouch hat. I found a cheap clasp purse in his jumper pocket which contained this paper, which is a piece of an envelope or paper sack addressed, James Moore, Paymaster AT in SF, Topeka, Kansas. In the purse was also part of a greenback. There was nothing else to identify the body. The boot was about a number 6, and the man did not seem to have been large. I examined the fingers and found the ends worn off, and there were 5 or 6 holes in the ground around the body, made by scratching for water. One of the holes further away seemed to have been made with a pick and shovel. There were no tools around the man, no canteen, and no sign of food. As we proceeded, I traced his bare foot tracks for more than 5 miles, coming from the direction of Yuma or New River and going toward Coyote Wells. The tracks were irregular and frequently crossed, and sometimes went into the lake. About 150 yards from the body, away from the lake, we found a reservoir of blue fresh water. We found the body on September 12th. As the body is in Mexico, nothing can be done by the officers here, and it will in all probability rest where it was found. Coroner Woodward will take steps to ascertain who the man was. This story came from the great state of New York, being reported in the New York Sun of October 14th, 1894. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.